My 4-year-old nephew slapped my face and said, "Mommy says you deserve it because you are a brokey." That was the moment I knew my mother had poisoned even a child with her cruelty. My mother Gina always believed she was the funniest person in every room. She did open mic comedy for years. Small bars. Short sets. But she called herself a professional. Making people laugh was her identity. She did not care who got hurt as long as she landed a punchline. If she could embarrass someone for a joke, she would. And I was her favorite target. When I was young, every mistake became her material. If I wet the bed, she told everyone at my birthday party. If I got my first period at school and bled through my clothes, she repeated it for months on stage. She acted like my pain was entertainment. She acted like shame was a gift she could hand out. The worst time was my engagement party. I had been with Luke for years and we finally got engaged. His parents hosted the party at their country club. His family was there. His father's business partners were there. People who mattered to him were there. Gina arrived already drunk. She wore a sequin dress like she was going to accept an award. She interrupted conversations with jokes that did not land. People smiled politely and looked uncomfortable. Halfway through dinner, Gina clinked her glass for a speech nobody asked for. She said she was proud I found a man willing to marry me despite everything. Then she said she had a funny story about why she never thought this day would happen. She told the room about my breakdown when I was 19. Not in a quiet, honest way. She performed it like a routine. She copied my crying. She acted out me begging her for help. She did an impression of me saying I wanted to die. She described the pills, the hospital, the hold. She made sounds like a heart monitor. She even got on the floor to show how I collapsed. No one laughed. Luke mother had tears in her eyes. Luke father looked sick. My future brother-in-law walked out. Gina kept going anyway. She said the funniest part was the doctor calling me self-aware. She laughed at her own joke while the room sat in horror. Luke did not know that part of my past. I planned to tell him one day, but not like that. Not as entertainment for his entire family. Gina finally noticed the silence and called them a tough crowd. Then she sat down like she had won the night. Luke family left early. Half of them stopped speaking to me after that. Some thought I was unstable. Some thought it ran in the family after seeing Gina. Luke nearly ended the engagement. We went to therapy for months. He needed to trust that I was okay. That it was a crisis long ago and not my whole life. Gina never apologized. She said I was too sensitive. She said comedy comes from truth. She even used the engagement party story in her next set. She mocked rich people for not laughing. She told me I should be grateful she made me memorable. Our wedding was coming soon. Gina assumed she would give a speech. She kept asking me for embarrassing stories about Luke so it would feel fair. She bought a white sequin dress like a wedding gown. She said she needed to stand out in photos. I told her she was not giving a speech. She laughed and said I could not stop the mother of the bride. That is when I decided she needed to feel what she had done to me. The week before the wedding, I invited Gina to what she thought was my bachelorette party. I also invited her comedy friends. Gina was thrilled. She believed I was finally including her world. She brought 15 people from her open mic nights. They were all hungry for attention. They all believed they were funnier than they were. I told everyone I wanted to do a roast. But with a twist. I said we would roast our parents for the strange and painful things they did while raising us. Gina loved the idea. She smiled like she had won a prize. She said I was finally developing a sense of humor. Gina went first. Of course she did. She told more stories about my childhood. She made me sound small and pathetic. She made the room laugh at me again. It was her favorite habit. Turning my life into a joke so she could feel powerful. Other people followed. They told stories about their parents that were silly and harmless. Strict dads. Overprotective moms. Funny family rules. People laughed the way they were supposed to laugh at a roast. Then it was my turn. I stood up and felt my heart hammer. I could hear my own breath. I could feel heat in my cheeks. But my voice came out calm. I started with a story Gina never told on stage. I said she got pregnant with me when she was 17. I said the father was her married English teacher, Mr. Randolph. I said she used him for money and threatened him when he tried to pull away. I said his wife found out. I said he killed himself. I said Gina kept the note that named her. The laughter stopped like someone cut the power. I kept going. I told them Gina put vodka in my bottle when I was little so I would sleep while she partied. I told them she brought men home who stared at me in ways a child should never feel. I told them she told me to be nicer to those men because they paid our rent. I told them my grandmother left money for my college and Gina stole it. She spent it on comedy classes she failed. I told them she was fired from job after job for stealing. I told them she went to rehab again and again but left early when she could not perform like it was a show. I told them about the time she arrived at my high school drunk. The principal called child services. Gina told the social worker I was lying for attention. The room stayed silent. No one moved. No one laughed. Only the sound of breathing and a chair shifting. Gina tried to laugh it off. She made her fake comedian laugh. But I kept going. I talked about my 8th grade talent show. Gina was so drunk she fell off her chair. Other parents helped her outside while I pretended I did not know her. I told them I once found her passed out in the bathtub with a lit cigarette. It burned a hole in the shower curtain. I told them about the Christmas she sold my Nintendo for drug money. Then she told me Santa was not real anymore because we were too poor. Faces changed around the table. One person stood up and walked out without a word. Another stared at Gina like she could not look away. One held up a phone and recorded the whole thing. I saw the small red light that meant it was still filming. For a moment, I felt powerful. It felt like electricity in my chest. Like I finally forced the world to see what I lived with. But under that bright feeling, something cold spread through my stomach. Because I was not just telling stories. I was destroying my mother in front of everyone she called a community. Everyone she used as her audience. And the look on her face made me feel like I kicked a dog. Gina tried to laugh again. Her voice cracked and turned into a cough. Her face went white under her makeup. A vein jumped in her neck. She opened her mouth and called me a liar. But it sounded weak. It sounded scared. Not angry. She said I was making things up. She said I always exaggerated. But her hands were shaking so hard she had to set down her drink. The other comedians looked at each other in quiet understanding. They were remembering all the stories Gina told about me. They were seeing what she left out. Someone suggested we all take a break and get air. The voice sounded too loud in the silence. Chairs scraped. Feet shuffled. People left in awkward waves. No one knew what to say. Within minutes the room emptied. Then it was only me and Gina. We sat across from each other at a table covered in empty glasses and crushed napkins. Gina looked at me with an expression I had never seen before. Fear. Real fear. Not her usual loud confidence. She asked why I would do that to her. Her voice sounded small and old. I told her she did it to herself. I told her she crossed the line when she turned my suicide attempt into a comedy routine at my engagement party. I told her she did it in front of 200 people. The words came out flat and hard. I watched her face crumple like paper. She started crying. Not the dramatic crying she used to get sympathy. This was messy and ugly. Black streaks ran down her cheeks. She said I ruined her reputation in comedy. She said those people were her only friends. She said I took away the one thing that made her feel like she mattered. I stood up while she was still talking. I grabbed my jacket. She kept saying my name. She asked me to wait. She said she wanted to explain. I walked out and left her alone. The hallway felt too bright. Too quiet. I could still hear her crying through the door. I thought I would feel satisfied. I thought I would feel clean and free. Instead I felt tired. Mean. Like I swallowed something sharp. Luke called me that night. He called again. I let it go to voicemail because I did not know how to explain what I had done. The next morning I listened to the messages. Luke sounded worried. He said Gina called him crying. She said I attacked her in public. He said his mother was asking questions. He said he did not know what to tell her. Rage rushed back into me. Of course Gina called him first. Of course she tried to make herself the victim. She probably told him I was unstable. She probably said I humiliated her for no reason. She probably said she was just trying to be a good mother. I threw my phone across the room. It hit the wall and left a mark. That afternoon I met Luke for coffee near his office. I arrived early and ordered a drink I did not touch. When Luke walked in he looked exhausted. Dark circles under his eyes. We sat down in a corner. I told him everything before Gina could twist it further. I described inviting her friends. I described setting up the roast. I described waiting for my turn. I described saying every awful truth out loud. Luke listened without interrupting. His coffee went cold. His face grew more serious with every detail. When I finished he was quiet for a long time. Then he asked a question that hit me like a slap. He asked if I felt better now that I heard her back. I wanted to say yes. But nothing came out. Because the truth was I did not feel better. I felt sick. I felt angry. I felt scared. Scared I was turning into Gina. Scared I was becoming the kind of person who hurts others and calls it justice. Luke told me his parents were asking if we should postpone the wedding. They feared another scene. They feared more family chaos. They used the word stable. That word made my throat burn. Because my family had never been stable. And if we waited for stable, we would wait forever. 2 days later Gina showed up at my apartment without calling. I looked through the peephole and almost did not open the door. She looked different. Not dramatic. Not loud. Her hair was messy and pulled back. She wore sweatpants and an old shirt. No sequins. No spotlight energy. I opened the door. She walked in slowly and sat on my couch like her legs were weak. She told me 2 comedy clubs had removed her from their open mic lists. She said people were talking. She said doors were closing. For a second I felt guilty. Then I remembered her on the floor at my engagement party, making sound effects of a heart monitor while strangers stared at me in horror. She surprised me by admitting something. She said the story about Mr. Randolph was true. She said she was 17 and stupid. She said she blackmailed him and did not understand how desperate he might become. She said she had nightmares about his wife calling her a murderer. She said she kept the suicide note hidden for years. I did not know what to feel. Gina rarely admitted anything. She rarely took responsibility. I did not know if this was honesty or another performance. Luke's parents invited both of us to dinner. They wanted to clear the air before the wedding. It felt like a test. Gina promised she would behave. She promised she would apologize properly. I did not trust her. Dinner was tense from the first minute. Luke's mother was polite but cold. Luke's father barely spoke. Gina began an apology. It started strong. Then it slowly turned into excuses. She talked about her hard childhood. She talked about being a single mother. She talked about having no support. Luke's mother cut her off. She said many people have difficult lives without exploiting their children for entertainment. The words sat heavy in the room. Luke's father asked directly if Gina planned to use our wedding as material. If she was already writing jokes about this dinner. The question felt sharp. Gina looked shaken. Her mouth opened but nothing came out. Her hands gripped the table. Then she said yes. She said she had been a terrible mother. She said she knew it even while she was doing it. She said making people laugh was the only time she felt important. Real tears ran down her face. Not dramatic. Not exaggerated. Just quiet and broken. She promised she would not give a speech at the wedding. She promised she would not make jokes. Luke's mother said one more incident would mean she was never welcome again. Something strange moved inside me. I wanted to protect myself. But I also wanted to protect her from complete exile. I said she would be at the wedding. Everyone looked at me in surprise. Even Luke. Later Luke asked if I truly wanted her there. Or if I just felt obligated. I did not know the answer. For 2 days I stayed home thinking. If she did not come people would ask questions. The wedding would become about her absence. But if she did come there was risk. I called her and gave strict rules. No speech. No jokes. No drinking too much. If she crossed a line she would be removed immediately. She agreed without arguing. That worried me more than anger would have. 3 days before the wedding a wedding planner called. She sounded panicked. Gina had asked about microphone access. She asked about timing. I felt heat rush through me. I drove to Gina's apartment immediately. She said she only wanted to sing a song. A musical tribute. Not a speech. I told her if she did anything to draw attention to herself I would cut contact forever. She cried and said I was cruel. I did not soften. I told her her version of celebrating always meant humiliating me. Luke suggested hiring security for the wedding. It sounded extreme. But necessary. His parents offered to pay. 3 days before the wedding one of Gina's comedy friends contacted me. He said she was calling everyone asking them to attend and support her. He said she seemed like she was planning something. I confronted her again. This time she broke down completely. She said she was scared of being alone at the wedding. She said she knew she had ruined things. She said she did not know how to exist at my wedding without a buffer. We saw our therapist the next day. I admitted I was afraid of becoming like her. The therapist said the fact that I feared it meant I was different. Luke said he trusted me but needed to know I would not weaponize his vulnerabilities. I promised him I would not. The night before the wedding I wrote Gina a letter. I said she could bring one friend for support. I said our relationship was damaged but I was willing to try if she respected boundaries. I said I needed space to build my marriage without being turned into material. I admitted I still wanted a mother even if she could not be the one I imagined. The morning of the wedding she came to my apartment with the letter in her hand. She said she read it many times. She said she would start real therapy. Not performative therapy. She said she did not expect forgiveness. She just wanted to try. I did not hug her. I did not cry. I told her to sit in the third row quietly. The ceremony happened in a garden. White chairs. Flowers everywhere. I walked down the aisle looking only at Luke. Gina sat in the third row in a simple blue dress. No white sequins. No spotlight. Lucy sat beside her. She cried silently. She did not move. She did not interrupt. The vows were peaceful. No chaos. No performance. At the reception I watched her approach Luke's parents. She spoke calmly. No jokes. No dramatics. Luke's father shook her hand politely. Luke's mother nodded. It was not forgiveness. But it was civility. 6 weeks later Gina and I began meeting once a week for coffee. We created rules. No using my life as material. No sharing private information. No drinking at our meetings. She talked about therapy honestly. She admitted she used comedy as armor. If she made people laugh first she could not be rejected. If she shocked them she did not have to be vulnerable. I listened. I did not forgive everything. I did not forget. But I did not destroy her either. Our relationship would never be normal. Too much damage lived in it. But I learned something important. Protecting myself did not require revenge. Boundaries were stronger than humiliation. Luke and I built our life slowly. I still flinched sometimes when Gina called. But I was no longer waking up afraid of being her next punchline. That freedom mattered more than any apology. And that is the story. Life after the wedding did not become perfect. It became real. Luke and I moved into a small apartment closer to his office. We spent weekends building shelves and arguing about paint colors instead of fighting about my mother. There was a quiet comfort in that. Normal problems felt like a gift. Gina kept her word at first. She showed up to our weekly coffee meetings on time. She ordered tea instead of wine. She kept a small notebook with her but did not write in it while I spoke. That alone felt like progress. One morning she told me her therapist asked her who she was when she was not performing. She said she did not know the answer. She said silence made her uncomfortable. She said she had always filled it with jokes before someone else could judge her. I realized something then. Comedy had not just been her weapon. It had been her shield. A shield she used so often she forgot how to put it down. That did not erase what she had done to me. It did not make the engagement party disappear. It did not undo the years of humiliation. But it gave context. And context can sometimes soften anger just enough to breathe. Luke watched carefully from the side. He never pushed me to forgive her. He never told me to cut her off either. He only asked one thing. That I protect our marriage first. I promised him that. Months passed without incident. No surprise phone calls from venues. No comedy friends appearing at our door. No viral videos. Gina stopped performing at open mics. At least for a while. She said she needed time to figure out why she did it. She said she wanted to try writing without using real people as targets. One afternoon she handed me something unexpected. It was the suicide note from Mr. Randolph. She said she was tired of hiding it. She said she needed to face what she did instead of turning it into a dark joke in her head. I did not read it right away. I took it home and placed it in a drawer. Some wounds are not meant to be reopened casually. Around the same time, Luke's parents invited us to dinner again. This time there was no tension in the air like before. Still cautious. Still guarded. But not sharp. Luke's mother asked Gina about therapy. Not in an accusing way. In a practical one. Gina answered honestly. No self-pity. No performance. Luke's father said he respected effort. Not words. Effort. Gina nodded and did not try to charm him. That small dinner felt bigger than my wedding in some ways. Because nothing dramatic happened. No speeches. No scandals. Just people choosing restraint. A year later I noticed something different inside myself. When Gina made a small joke about her own past mistakes, I did not tense up. Because she was not aiming it at me. She was aiming it at herself. That shift mattered. One day during coffee she looked at me and said she did not expect to ever be a good mother. But she hoped to become a better person. She said she understood that those were not the same thing. I told her I did not know if we would ever have the kind of relationship people envy. But we could try to have one built on honesty instead of humiliation. She nodded. She did not ask for applause. Luke and I continued therapy even after the crisis faded. Not because something was broken, but because we wanted to stay aware. We wanted to build something different from what I grew up with. There were still moments when old habits tried to return. Gina once joked about a small argument Luke and I had. I froze immediately. She noticed. She stopped mid-sentence. She apologized without being asked. That apology meant more than any big dramatic confession. Years passed slowly. The wedding became a memory instead of a threat. My engagement party story stopped being the first thing people knew about me. I realized something important. I had exposed Gina's secrets because I wanted justice. But what I actually needed was safety. Revenge did not give me safety. Boundaries did. There is a difference. If I had cut her out completely, I would have protected myself. And that would have been valid. If I had never spoken to her again, no one could have blamed me. But I chose something harder. Limited contact. Clear rules. Honest conversations. No microphones. No stages. That choice did not make me weak. It made me intentional. Gina still struggles. She always will. Some patterns take a lifetime to untangle. But she no longer uses my darkest moments as punchlines. And I no longer live in fear of becoming her next bit. The real turning point was not the fake bachelorette party. It was not the wedding. It was the moment I realized I could protect myself without destroying someone else. That realization changed me more than any speech ever could. Now when people tell me I am strong, I do not think about the roast or the confrontation. I think about the mornings I said no. The afternoons I held my ground. The nights I chose not to retaliate. Strength is quieter than Gina ever understood. And that is the end of the story. If this made you think about boundaries or family or the line between justice and revenge, then it did its job. Some stories are not about winning. They are about choosing who you want to become when you are given the chance to hurt back. Thank you for staying through the whole journey.